Hi guys, and welcome to Stitching Stories. This month we're doing a pyramid bag, and we're going to be talking about science fiction books. I'm sorry, I just could not limit myself to only 5 science fiction books. So you guys have 7 this month, and even that was hard to do. There were like 10 I wanted to talk about. And because I had a furry little ball of chaos with me while I was filming this week, the books got added into the video in the wrong order. So you will hear me say, this is the last book when it's not the last book. And you will hear me say, please hang on until the end and get a sneak peek when we're barely to the middle of the video. But please do hold on to the end. You'll get a sneak peek to what we're going to be doing next month. And I really think you guys are going to love it. I hope you have fun with this project. And I hope you love these books. Hi guys. Well, I have a sewing companion today. So we're going to see how this goes and how much she tries to steal. So far, she's tried to steal my thread. She's tried to steal my zipper. But we're going to try this. So I have everything we're going to need to do our project. I have 2 pieces for the outside. And I have 2 pieces that I'm going to use for the lining. Now mine aren't perfectly square, but you want to try to get as close to an 8-inch square as you can get. You can see my blue ones are not super square because I was a little sloppy when I cut it. We're going to start with 1 piece of our lining and 1 piece of our outside. And I'm going to use this awesome Ravenclaw fabric that I have. Now, it's a square, so I can do any side that I want. Doesn't matter. And this print goes every which way, so it doesn't matter. If you have a print that is stripes or directional, you kind of want to pay attention to how you lay it out and if you care how the pattern goes by the zipper. So the first thing we're going to do is put the zipper in. And for that, like I said, we have our 2 squares of fabric. I have my needle and my thread. I have my thread snips, I have my zipper, and something that we haven't bothered to use before, I have my pins. I have a magnetic pin cushion, which I'm not going to take out because I think the fur ball is going to steal it. You've all used the zipper before. You have them in your jackets. You have them in your clothes. The outside of the zipper is the part with the pull tab. Mine is an invisible zipper. It means you can't see the zipper. It's just a fancy way of saying that it's got a piece of fabric to cover the actual zipper. So the zipper you might have may have that fabric on the outside like mine does, or the outside of yours might look like that. But if it looks like that, this tab will be on this side. This tab is the important part. You want this tab facing the right side of your outside fabric. So we're going to lay it down like this. Mine is bigger than the fabric. That's okay because it's a nylon zipper. You move it to match up with one side, this side, and I'm going to unzip it a little bit just to make it easier to pin. And this end piece, I'm going to fold that down a little bit. And that's just to tuck in the edge. And then you take a pin and put it through the fabric next to the zipper. Sorry, my hands are going to be in the way until I lift it up. The fabric through the zipper and then under the zipper. You don't have to use a ton of pins because we're going to put another piece of fabric over top of this. But I'm going to pin it in 3 places just so I have it still. And then down here on the end, after I pin it, I'm going to take my big scissors and I'm going to cut right through it. This is a nylon zipper, so it might take a little muscle, but you can cut right through it. And it won't hurt your zipper and it won't hurt your scissors, but it has to be a nylon zipper to do that. Almost all the zippers you're buying in fabric stores are going to be nylon zippers. And this one, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to fold the whole zipper down at the end. And this one's a little harder than the other side. If it's too hard and you can't do that, don't worry about it. Just leave it in the seam. We're going to line this, so it's okay. Now, I'm going to take the lining, and the lining is going to go on top of both of those. So then I'm going to take the pin out, and I'm still going to try to get that to fold down. So I'm in frame. We're going to fold that down. And now, so now I have a sandwich of lining, zipper, lining. And pin goes through all three of them and then comes back up. Try not to stick yourself with it. But there, you can see it goes through all three. And I'll do this up here so you can see it, because now I have it in place. So all three of them are together. I take the pin out. It's going to go all three down and up all three. And the same thing, if you can, tuck this in and then push it down. If it doesn't want to stay, mine does not want to stay, I'm just going to leave it flat. All right, so that is the first thing we're doing. You guys have seen me thread a needle a bazillion times, so I'm not going to make you watch me thread a needle. And we're going to stitch this with a running stitch. It's nothing different than anything else we've done. You can start on either end, whichever one is more comfortable for you. And your goal is to come up, you want to go through both pieces of fabric and the fabric by the zipper. Now you don't want to get too close to the zipper, because this is what happens. And this is what happens when I sewed the first one. I don't know if you can tell, but my gold fabric, I stitched so close to the zipper. And of course that time it opened, because I was going to show you that there was a problem. But a lot of the times it's very hard to get past that spot. And there's another one down here. I sewed too close and the fabric gets stuck in my zipper. So you want to try to sew, see, it's not far away from the zipper. It's only like, I don't know, maybe a quarter of an inch, if that. But you need that little bit of space so that your zipper will work. So you're going to go up, and I kind of peek and make sure I got everything that I wanted in there. And this one, I actually go backwards so I can catch this knot. And then it's just like any other running stitch we've done. You can put your fingernail next to the zipper so you know where it is. And maybe that will help you keep from getting too close to the zipper. And we're going to just keep going up and down a regular running stitch. And while I'm doing this, let's talk about some science fiction books. I picked science fiction this month because, well, this pouch, it just always reminds me of D&D, which is more fantasy than science fiction, but it also reminds me of geometry. And I think it's really cool because even though we're starting with we're starting with squares, but we're going to end up with a triangle. And I thought that was a really neat science-y trick, which then made me think of science fiction books. So you guys will get to hear about science fiction books. Now, a lot of people think science fiction is just space stories and aliens, but there's so much more than that. There is a lot of space, and there's a lot of space on my list today, but there's also things like Frankenstein. A lot of people think that's horror, but it's not. It's science fiction. There's a lot about medicine in that book. And so another science fiction could be Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde, which is an awesome story about a mad scientist. And I just think it's really cool because science fiction takes stuff that is based in the real world, is based in science in some way, but then twisted a little bit and added maybe a futuristic aspect, or in steampunk, a different way of looking at history. And it gives us a totally new world. So I'm going to do my new thread and start introducing you to some really awesome science fiction books that have been around for a little while and a couple that are brand new. The first book we're going to talk about is The True Meaning of Smekday by Adam Rex. This book inspired the movie Home, but the book and the movie are very different. The book takes place after an alien race, the Boov, have invaded Earth and taken over. They've renamed Earth Smekland, and they've instituted their own holidays. And our main character's name is Gratituity, nicknamed Tip. Tip has to write a school essay about the true meaning of Smekday. Smekday is celebrated on December 25th, and it celebrates the general that led the takeover of Earth. So, most books about alien takeovers would not be characterized as funny and a friendship story, but this one is. It's the story of the first Smekday that Tip experienced, and where she met one of the Boov and became friends with one of the invaders. It's a fun and funny story. It also is a story that makes you think. If you just kind of change the aliens to Europeans and the Earthlings to Native Americans or Native peoples, this becomes a story of colonization, and it really makes you think without saying, you must think this. Instead, you can understand maybe some other people's point of view, and it's also just a fun and interesting read while you're doing it. Normally, I would say it's okay to end a little bit from the edge. For this, because it's a zipper, I want to go pretty close to the end, especially since I didn't tuck it in. I want to make sure that this end little piece is secure. All right, so I'm going to go make a small stitch, come back up and go through the loop. And then I'm going to go through the loop one more time and through this. And it's just, really it's tying a knot. I go through once, and then this is the second half of the knot, and pull it. And then we take our snips, and we snip. And take out all my pins. You can take, once you stitch past the pin, you can take them out if you like. Now we're going to open it up and see. This is my outside of the bag, and the zipper pull is towards that. So when I have the other side attached and it's sewn closed, this is what this side of the top will look like. And I keep putting my hands between me and the camera. I have enough that I can unzip it. I don't want to unzip it all the way because it'll go right off the end. And I can zip it up closed. Now we want to put the other side on. So I have my fabric. And again, this tab is going to go towards the right fabric. So this is going to go right side to right side. And again, I'm going to unzip it a little bit just so it's a little easier to pin. And again, I'm going to fold down that end. There we go. And it can go through the other side if you want. That's on the other side of the zipper. It's safe. We're not going to sew through it. Okay. Now, my lining is a little bit easier. both sides of it look the same. So I don't have to worry about a right side or a wrong side. I'm going to put it on top, and I'm going to move the pins so they go through my lining, my zipper, and the right side fabric. All right, so there we go. And I still have thread from the other side. So we're going to knot the end. And this, we're doing the exact same thing we did for the other side. I'm going to start at the open end. Our next book is Dragon Pearl, which is from Rick Warden Presents. Rick Warden is an awesome author, and he's also really talented in finding new authors who are fabulous and they write from their own cultural experience. And this novel is no exception. The novel is Dragon Pearl by Yoon Ha Lee. Yoon Ha Lee is a Korean author, and her book is a blend of Korean mythology and science fiction. It's a space adventure that stars Min. Min is 13 years old, and she comes from a long line of fox spirits. But you never know it by looking at her. To keep her family safe, Min's mother insists that none of them use any fox magic, such as charm or shape-shifting. They must always appear human. Min hates where she is at home. She feels hemmed in by all the rules. She's never allowed to use her magic. And it is so crowded. There are so many cousins and aunties. And someone's always telling her what she's doing wrong and what she should be doing. And there's endless chores. She would like nothing more than to escape Jinju. Jinju is her home world, and nothing ever happens there. She's just counting the days until she can follow her older brother, Joon. Joon, when he was 19, left for Space Force to see more of the Thousand Worlds and, honestly, to escape the family and Jinju. But word has come that Joon is a deserter. He left his post to go searching for a dragon pearl. Min knows that something's wrong. Joon would never do that. He wouldn't just desert his friends and his battle cruiser to search for some mystical object. So she decides to run away to find him and clear his name. Min's quest will have her meeting gamblers, pirates, and vengeful ghosts. It involves deceptions, lies, and sabotage. She'll be forced to use more fox magic than she ever even thought she could, and to rely on all of her cleverness and bravery. The outcome might not be what she hoped, but she hopes to clear her brother's name and return home alive. Small stitch here, go through once, oops, then again, and snip. All right, I'm going to use my snips because I have a lot of frayed edges here too. Okay, so we got rid of all those frayed edges. Now, laying out this way is the inside, and I have the blue, and there's the inside of the zipper. This side I have my ravens, and it's the outside of the zipper. Now, if you like ironing, I've already told you guys, I hate ironing, so I'm not going to do this stuff. But if you want to get nice crisp edges here, you can get out an iron, and you're just going to iron over this. You want to do it at a fairly low heat. Don't set it for cotton, which can you work on this, because it won't be really good on this fleece, and it really won't be good on the nylon zipper. So you want like a low heat. But you can iron over that and it'll separate it out. Now, you can see just how badly my fabric is not square. That's why when you do it, you should try to get it as close to square as you can. So what I'm going to do, so that's not too bad, but this blue is so much bigger that I'm going to trim a little off. And the same thing on this side. It's how long it is here and over there. So I'm just gonna trim it up. Now we're going to do a long side seam. So we're going to take the right side of our outside fabrics and put them together, and our linings and put them together. And we're going to sew from here all the way along to this end. And then we're going to do the other side from here all the way along to this end. You are not going to sew this bottom or this bottom, just the long side seams. And so we're going to take these, and it's really the same thing that we did with the zipper, except we don't have a zipper to worry about. And I'm going to start at the zipper and work towards the end because I don't want to match here and then come up here and be not matched up. So I'm going to put a pin on either side of this seam, and then every 2 inches or so, I'll put another pin. It doesn't have to be super exact. My mom used to sew without putting pins in. She just was that good. She would line it up in her hand and she would just go. Really small projects, I could probably do that. But this is pretty long and I want a straight seam. So I'm going to pin them together. So this is my pin cushion. It's really just a giant magnet. Plus of it is my pins are attracted to it. Minus of it is I get pins all over it. All right. So we did one side, and you can see I have pins all the way down. Now I'm just going to do the other side. If the pins bother you and like you feel like they're sticking you when you're sewing, just do one side, sew it, and then do the other side. If they don't bother you, go ahead and pin both sides. I'd rather pin both sides so I don't have to stop and do it again. So it doesn't really matter if you start at this end or you start at that end. You're just going to start at one end and go all the way down. And just like always, I'm starting with a small stitch and going through to lock my thread. And then I'm just going to do a running stitch. I know I said science fiction wasn't just space, but our third book is yet another space adventure. This one is a graphic novel called Zeta the Space Girl by Ben Hatke. Ben Hatke is an American cartoonist, and I love his graphic novels. The artwork is cute and fun, and his characters are funny and real. And Zeta the Space Girl starts with probably one of my favorite premises. Zeta and her friend Joseph are out playing, and a giant red button falls from the sky. It's a red button! What do you do with a red button? You push it, of course. So that is what Zeta does. And when she does, a tentacle comes through, grabs her friend Joseph, and pulls him in. And then the doorway that the tentacle came through closes, and Zeta is left alone with no idea where Ben went. Well, what's a girl to do? Of course, she pushes the button and jumps through the door to go rescue her friend Joseph. This kicks off a 3-book series where the whole aim is to rescue Joseph and get home. In the course of this three-book series, Zeta is going to travel the universe, rescue Joseph, meet new friends, fight a robot Zeta, get charged with crimes, and hopefully, ultimately, find her way home. But it's a great adventure with a heroine that is very loyal to her friends, full of mischief and adventure, maybe doesn't think things through, but has a great time living her life. Now, see here, you can see the zipper is there peeking out. I'm just going down right through all three of them. And here it doesn't matter if I'm close to the zipper, although I want to make sure my seam stays straight. If I pull it too much, it'll all pucker up, and we don't want that. We want it nice and flat. But I can go down right on the other side of the zipper. And in fact, I think, because I want to make sure it's really strong here, I'm going to go around that again. All right, for our fourth book, I promised you that not all sci-fi is about space adventures, and that is true, even though space adventures are awesome. Our fourth book is The Last Day of Summer Vacation by Lamar Giles. Lamar Giles' novel is, think of it as a cross between The Hardy Boys and Phantom Tollbooth. It is a story of two brothers, Otto and Sheed, and they're already fairly well known in their local Virginia town as being the local detectives. But, it's the end of summer and school's about to start, and, they just want a little bit more time, a little bit more summer. And along comes someone who offers them a camera that can literally freeze time. That's right. They can freeze time and delay going back to school. They could freeze a minute and find out what goes on in that secret time that nobody sees. Or, they could just delay going home for dinner. What harm could it do? Or it could do a lot of harm. What happens if time stops forever? The last day of summer is the story of how Otto and Sheed have to figure out how to stop time from ending forever. Maybe save their town, maybe save the world. We'll have to see if they can do that before they have to go back to school in the fall. So when you take the small stitch to knot it, make sure you're doing it on the seam allowance and not over here in the big pouch part, because otherwise then you're sewing together stuff that you don't want sewn together. You want this open so you can hold your stuff there. So you want it to be over here in the seam allowance if you do the small stitch to the side the way I do for the knot. Our final two books send us back out into space. Not as far as the first few. We're not going to other galaxies or across the universe. We're just going a planet over to Mars. Both of our last stories take place on Mars. The first of which is Into the Red by Christopher Swiedler. And his main character is Michael Broussard. Michael Broussard has grown up on Mars. He lives in a dome with his parents, and his father works miles and miles away at a lab that maintains the magnetic core that helps create the magnetic field that protects everyone on Mars from the deadly radiation on the planet. Now, there are risks even in the dome. There are solar flares, there are troubles, but for the most part, it's pretty safe, which is fine. But Michael really wants to go out of the dome. He wants to experience the surface of Mars. He wants to be able to explore. He wants to visit the lab with his father. And, most people could do this. Even little kids do it. They go outside and play. They put on a space helmet and they go for a test in kindergarten, just like we get library cards. Problem is, when Michael did that, they discovered that he gets panic attacks. Really bad panic attacks. And the trigger is whenever he starts to put on a space helmet. And everybody tells him it's okay. He wears a medical alert bracelet so that if anything happens and there's an emergency, those in charge know that he can't wear a space helmet, that he'll need special help. And everyone tells him it's normal, it's fine, he can deal with it. And, most people stay in the dome most of the time, so he's not really missing anything. But Michael knows. They keep looking at him like he's broken, like there's something wrong with him. And he knows there's nothing wrong with him. It's a panic attack.
but no one is willing to let him try to overcome it. So he decides finally, when he's 13, to sneak out and take the test again. He knows that he can do it. He's been practicing. He knows all the facts about it, and he's going to do it. And you know what he does? He passes that first test. All the little kids head back in. They get their passes so they can go out and play on Mars with their parents. The older kids are taking a more advanced test. It includes navigating outside of the dome, running in a rover, and Michael definitely is not qualified to be taking the test. But the guy running the test kind of just assumes that he is because, everybody has that beginner's pass by the time Michael's age. So he stays out. And amazingly, he does really well. He has no panic attacks. He's rocking it right up until he starts to have some trouble and he starts to worry that he's going to fail it. And what happens if his parents find out? And what happens if he can't get back? And what happens if he gets stuck? And cue the panic attack. Which, of course, means that he gets sick in his space helmet and his parents find out and he's grounded for life. Enter his best friend, Lilith. Lilith is like, come on, you did it. You only got in your own head. You can do this. So they sneak out and they borrow a rover and go joyriding. And she's right. He can do it. He's got it. They're miles away from the dome and having a blast when a solar flare strikes. And suddenly there's a problem. The magnetic field goes down. Radiation spikes. Power is out. No one knows what's going on. And Michael and Lilith are out. Miles from the dome. Miles from the lab where his father is. With no one to depend on but themselves. Do they head back to the dome? Do they head for the lab? Will they survive with the radiation? Now Michael has a lot more to deal with than just passing a test. And this is a pulse-pounding race for survival. They need to find out not only where they are, but where they can get help. And when they do find help, can they survive the ultimate test of Mars?
Pretty well, because I don't want my zipper to accidentally go flying off the teeth. I want it to hit these stitches and be like, okay, stop here. Our second Mars book is The Lion of Mars by Jennifer Holm. You might know her from her graphic novels like Baby Mouse or Squish or some of her other chapter books. The Lion of Mars is about Belle. Belle, just like Michael in our previous book, spent his whole life on Mars. Belle is 11 years old, and he's just a regular kid. He loves cats, any kind of cake, and is curious about the secrets the adults in the U.S. colony are keeping. Like, why don't they have contact with anyone on the other Mars colonies? Why are they so isolated? When a virus breaks out and the grown-ups all fall ill, Belle and the other children are the only ones who can help. It's all up to Belle, a regular kid in a very different world, to uncover the truth and save his family and possibly unite the entire planet of Mars. So this is a second take on Mars. It's very different from the Michael Prasad adventure, where Michael's is based in a lot of science and it's a lot of adrenaline-fueled race. Belle's is more a mystery and figuring things out and what's going on in that secret world of adults. And why don't they ever tell kids anything? It's like they don't trust them to do anything on their own. But Belle and his friends can save the adults. They hope. So check out Lion of Mars for a great kid power story, and Into the Red for a great science story and a great adventure story. Hope you guys like all of these books, and I hope you enjoy the sewing project. And next month, we'll be making something special, so stick around to the very end to get a sneak peek. Okay, and we're almost to the end. And we're going to do the small stitch off to the side to knot it. We're not going to turn it right side up quite yet. Okay, now we have both the side seams done. This is where the magic part happens and it turns into a triangle. Trust me, it really does. Instead of just sewing across here, we're going to pull this open and the side seams are going to line up and we are going to sew it like this. And you're just going to do it to the outside of your pouch. So whatever you want on the outside of the pouch, that's what you're doing. And don't, no. Furry sewing companions. This time she stole a pin. Okay. So our side seams go together, and this is the fabric that I'm going to have on the outside of my bag. Now you can split your seams open like this if you want. I don't know if you can even see, my seam allowances are so small, but I tend to do both of them on this side and then both on the other side on the bottom instead of splitting them open. And I'm going to put a pin on either side of the seam, just like I did on either side of the zipper, because I want to make sure that that stays in the middle of my pouch. And then I'm going to just put one pin there to keep it kind of even, and one pin here to keep kind of even. Now, this white bit on the edge of the fabric is called a salvage. It's the very, very edge of the fabric on the bolted fabric that you buy at the fabric store. And sometimes there will be a white stripe or some printing, and that's going to keep my seam allowance here a little bit thicker because I don't want that to show on the outside of my bag. And we're just going to running stitch again. It's all about the running stitch on this bag. It's so gorgeous today, I almost went outside to sew. All right. Like I said, it's going to keep me honest with my seam allowance. I don't want that white to show, so I've got to stitch above it.
Our fifth book is Wild Robot by Peter Brown. A lot of you have probably already read it, or at least know of it. If you haven't read it, or if you don't know about it, I definitely recommend finding it. Peter Brown's Wild Robot is a survival story, not of a child, but of a robot. Roz wakes up on the beach of an island. Not an uninhabited island. There's plenty of life there. There are deer and geese and fox, but they're not so friendly to Roz. And Roz doesn't know why she's there or really how she got there, but she does know she wants to survive. So she spends the year befriending and learning from the animals on the island. And sooner or later, we all know, a robot didn't just appear on the beach of an island. Someone must have made her. Someone must have lost her. And eventually, those someones do come looking for Roz. And Roz and her friends have to deal with Roz's past and whether or not she gets to stay on the island. So this is a great adventure story. It's a great animal story. It's an interesting science fiction story. And I would say that it makes you stop and think about maybe some of the electronics we have in our life, and also how we treat others and how we treat newcomers, as well as how we act when we go to a new place. It's just a really awesome adventure book and really interesting. And it has a sequel, The Wild Robot Escapes. So if you love the first, you automatically have a second one to enjoy.
All right, so when I get to the end, I'm just going to go all the way around the edge. Through once. And then through again to make that knot. And then I'm going to snip it. So now we are still inside out. we are not going to sew this end yet. We're going to reach all the way through. Put your fingers to the corners. Put them together. And pull it this way. And turning those corners, sometimes trying to get that corner out is a little bit tough. But you can wiggle it and keep wiggling it and pulling it until you get the total corner out. All right, and I know you're going, but it looks like a square, except when we zip it, it is now, will be a triangle because that will close up. But we don't want our lining to just be open at the bottom. So for this one, do you guys remember our blind stitch? You can do the blind stitch, but this is going to be inside the bottom of your bag. No one is going to see it. So if you don't want to do the blind stitch, you can just do the same as we did before, the running stitch. But you're, in this time, instead of leaving the seam allowance out, we're stitching on the right side of the fabric. So we're going to fold it in. So see, I just folded maybe a 1/2 inch. And again, our side seams go together so that we can make our triangle. And if you're worried about everything popping out and you're like, oh no, that's what our pins are for. So we put a pin there. I'm going to put a pin here. And pin here. She's sulking because I took the pin away from her. And a pin here. Okay. So, for those of you that just want to do the running stitch, you can do a running stitch and you're going to go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, all the way across. For those of you that want to do the blind stitch, I'm going to go through it really quickly, just as a refresher so you remember what it was. You're going to stitch down in here and come up. We're going to loop it so it ties off, and then tuck that thread down in there. And we're going to go directly across, perpendicular to the seam. And then our thread is going to come along that fold and go parallel to the seam. So the thread goes that way, and then the needle goes that way. There you go. And then we're going to come back directly across, perpendicular to the seam, and go down. And across. Now you see when I pull it tight, you can barely even see those stitches. So I'm just going to go all the way across and do that. Now here, I don't want this to end up gapping because there's so much fabric here. So I'm going to do a couple really small stitches, and I'm actually going to go back up this way. And back across that way. Yeah. All right, and we want to go all the way to the edge because we don't want to leave a hole for our things to fall out of. Or fall into, I guess, in this case, since it's the lining thread. And a snip, snip. I put my needle in my spool of thread. That way I don't lose it the way I did when I was sewing. Our lining gets tucked inside and just push those corners down. There you go. There's our bag. And it is a triangle. I told you that was cool. I 4 flat squares turn into a pyramid pouch with 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles. It's also a D4 dice for those of you that like odd-shaped polygons. I guess it would be polyhedrals. And I'll show you what I think might... I had some of my computer stuff in the gold pouch. Now I have some beads and sewing things. But I think I have a whole bunch of dice. Let's see if I can find the one that I wanted to show you. This one is a 4-sided die. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just like our pouch. And I use them to play a game. And I think that I am going to put my dice in this bag. They'll fit in there and they'll be nice and cozy. I have that blue fuzzy on the inside. By the way, if you guys wanted to get this blue fuzzy fabric and put it on the outside of your bag, so the outside of your bag was fuzzy and pettable, you could totally do that. And you could put cotton on the inside. I just decided I liked it better this way. So I did the fuzzy on the inside and my Ravenclaw on the outside. And I can zip it up. And I have a green zipper on mine. And there we go. So I hope you guys liked our sci-fi books and our perfectly awesome pyramid pouch or triangle bag, whatever you would like to call it. Next month, if you guys stick around to the end, I will have a sneak peek of what we are making next month. I'm going to do a pattern from Red Ted Art, and I can't wait for you guys to see it.